Spawning in the top right of Waterfall, it is Kelazhur.
And in the bottom left-hand side, our purple Zerg player from Kaiser Gaming is going to be Solar.
What do you think, Wardy? Does Kelazhur have a chance?
Yeah, I feel like Kelazhur can be, especially because the map pool's a little bit Terran favored, one might say. I do think Kelazhur is the kind of player that can mix it up a little bit and be kind of exciting sometimes and do some weird things on these maps that could definitely catch Solar off guard. And to be fair, Solar's definitely not been as consistent as he should have been lately. You know, when I see Solar going into this, I feel like you asked me 6 months ago, I'm like, absolutely, Solar. Kelazhur, most of the time I think Solar wins that. But yeah, more recently that's been a little bit more of a question, I suppose. So yeah, it's he's just not been as consistent. He's not had the results which you maybe expect of Solar. And sometimes that's just Solo though as well, right? Like online, he can definitely step up and be like a whole new player. So yeah, I don't know. I'd say Kelazhur has like maybe a 1 in 4 online against Solo right now.
Wow, okay, that's actually lower than I was expecting.
I was like 1 in 3 maybe. I was like,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm with you, though. I'm kind of at like a 40% for Kelazhur, so I don't think he's favored, but I don't think he's as unfavored as one would expect looking at the names. Just in general, having the, I guess, Korean bias, right? Koreans are supposed to win everything. But because Kelazhur can have those really just like game-ending, almost simple mistakes, I witnessed him very recently in the qualifiers league for TSL, had these beautiful games versus, I believe it was Lambo, and then, not pick up 2 medevacs of like a 3CC2-1-1, so it's pretty important to keep it alive. So that's what I'm thinking for Kelazhur. But then Solar, I think at this point, a lot of people they will just agree that he's the unluckiest player, all right? And we think of the nukes, but I think there's other aspects of it as well, and unlucky is a very kind of vague term, and not something you can really prove, I suppose. But it does seem like community they get what everyone means when they say that, because it seems to be just agreed upon. Solar can't get the performance that we expect, and not necessarily because he's looking bad. Although I will say for Valencia, he did just look very off the entire time, but as we know, apparently there is some stuff going on behind the scenes, so that's maybe a bit of an outlier. But everything else, yeah, it's still a question mark, because we're like, okay, where is Solar going to get really unlucky? Where is Solar going to zig when he should have zagged?
You know what it is? You say you give Kelazhur 40%. I'm like, that's exactly what I was going to say, but I feel like all the time I say it's 60-40, I feel like I say 60-40 more than anything else. It's like, I'll change it up. Maybe went a bit too far in the 1 in 4, but yeah. No, I do think, I actually watched these guys practice a bit when I was at Home Story Cup, and Solo is generally getting the better of Kelazhur. I feel like in a tournament setting, that's something Kelazhur can absolutely step up a little bit, though. I do think like some early game trickery and so on could go his way. I do feel like maybe if the game gets to like a 15-ish minute state, I feel like then it actually might be very difficult for Kelazhur. So definitely expecting him to do well early or into the early mid game. Some sort of timing, some kind of pushes, maybe big 3 base attacks. That's where Kelazhur for me is the strongest. The later it gets, the way more confident I get for Solo.
I'm totally down with that explanation. I do think that Kelazhur has had some pretty feisty late games, and I think we might be thinking of Mech. At least, maybe that is what I'm thinking of. But even with Bio, I've seen some really great late games from him. So generally, I do agree. But with the kind of thing you brought up, which I think is important to spend a little more time on, are the maps. You said that they have kind of generally been agreed to be Terran favored. That is true. But we're on Waterfall to start things off. First game of the day, first map of the day for Terran versus Zerg. Not at all what I was expecting, but so far not being used for anything aggressive. Actually, Kelazhur just went for a 3CC despite a forward opening. He did not go for maybe one of his patented 2 racks or even 3 racks Reaper openers. No, just into 3CC.
Yeah, and I think as he gets a little bit of harassment done here, I think it's honestly not that bad a choice either, though, because the cool thing about this map is you can be very aggressive off 3 bases very successfully, but if you do want to play late, it's honestly not a bad map for Terran late game either. It's small, there's only so many bases the Zerg can take. As you expand as the Terran, you're going to start threatening the bases that the Zerg player needs to have as well. So it becomes very, very difficult for at that point, the Zerg to kind of reliably play any stage of the game on this map, it's always going to be something of a challenge. So, yeah, in terms of the map pick, I'm kind of intrigued at like Solo leaving this in, and it definitely makes me feel pretty good for Kelazhur. Maybe get one on the board early in this best of 3 as he is going queen hunting here. Shouldn't find too much, and some of those Hellions are low. He did make a lot of Hellions as well, right? That's above 8, which is usually kind of the non-standard amount. So it does delay his barracks and stuff a little bit longer for some extra map control of the Hellions.
And he did threaten moving into the natural at least once as well, which I think the Zergs really have to take seriously. There's that many Hellions, but didn't actually end up pulling the trigger on that. Still doing a great job clearing up creep tumors wherever he can find it. I mean, one of the nice things about this map, despite being a very small map, well, we got a little bit of a tucked-in situation here, but the Hellion number should help solve this problem. Yeah, okay, 5 left over, still pretty good. But anyways, that, despite being a very small map, the way that you do have to bounce from left to right, because of the positioning of the ramps on the bases, does mean that, like, the Hellions aren't literally on top of every single creep tumor all the time. So, that there's something for Solar to work with, but even as I say it, Kelazhur has been doing a great job of literally bouncing all the way to the left and then all the way to the right before Solar can get more than a couple of creep tumors down.
4th base, man, is already on the way from Kelazhur, so he is not messing around when it comes to the macro game, which is kind of cool, because he says, hey, I'm very confident to play a macro game. This is obviously Aaron on the side of being very greedy, right? 4th base coming down already, kind of in sync with the Zerg's 4th base building, so yeah, Kelazhur playing a greedy game, but I don't mind him bringing this one out, because like I said, the longer that this game goes, it can be tricky for the Zerg. It gets to that point where the Zerg just has to deny the Terran economy, because if the Terran can mine out their side of the map, there's generally not a way for you to win the game as a Zerg. So, yeah, I kind of like Kelazhur's approach, and it's definitely something that Solo's not able to take advantage of at all here so far. So, yeah, working out well as long as he does feel comfortable going into those later stages of the game.
It is going to be a funny situation on this map. It's very small. It is the small list in terms of dimensions, and then also just the amount of bases that you have. So, we're approaching that late game problem much faster than the actual time dictates, especially because, yeah, Kelazhur's already onto his 4th base, already finished, waiting to move it on over. But if Solar can then perhaps get to lurkers, right, then we're talking about more cost efficiency. Maybe that will do perfectly fine, but we're not there yet. Solar is still just getting up to Hydras, no infestation pit yet, and we were so little out in the map, it's not like Solar can really even try to find an opening on Kelazhur's side. So it kind of is like, okay, well, what are you going to do, right? Make sure not to take any more unnecessary damage than you have to by these drops, or maybe one okay, decent-sized push. But yeah, time to move on. Time to get to that hive.
Yep, just going to keep on moving through, get through towards that lurk den, and just really start to hammer home the fact that you want some good tech here to work with. I do like these drops from Kelazhur. Generally not very committed, just lift up, don't lose too much for the damage on the medevac. He is pushing into the center. Again, he doesn't need to be overly aggressive here because he's got that 4th base already coming online, but he also sits at a pretty healthy army supply. His upgrades are even, and he's got the lead, so he won't be outmatched in upgrades at any point. I don't hate him kind of coming forwards and clearing out some creep and just taking some control away from Solar, who is a long way off getting anything outside of Lingbane Hydra.
I mean, it seems to be well played from both of them. I think Kelazhur, I mean, I guess the matchup dictates it is kind of controlling the pace a little bit, but it's so Solar making sure to at least get up to that hive. So as long as he doesn't let Kelazhur get too close to that, well, 3rd, I suppose it is, we're going to have lurkers in play. But then the question is, can Kelazhur deal with unupgraded lurkers without those ghosts quite up and running yet? There's no Ghost Academy yet, so definitely not there. And the answer might be yes. He might actually be able to take care of it if Solar can't get a decent amount, if Solar doesn't have them out on the map as fast as pretty much possible, because Kelazhur's already knocking on the door, certainly going to deny the 6th base, as that's been attempted quite a few times. And now, yeah, here's the rub, I suppose. Do we try and get lurkers? Do we try and swamp this? Does Solar... Okay, he's going to go pull the trigger. Swapping like it, though. Yeah, it's a lot off of creep.
It's off of creep. There was mines there as well, and the mines actually did a lot against the initial Lingbane that came forward. which really allowed Kelazhur to obviously just get rid of some of that initially. And I do feel like his Ghost Academy is coming down at the perfect time. Lurkers are very manageable with tanks up until now, until they get that range upgrade. By the time that comes in play, he's going to have the Ghost available. So I love Kelazhur's timing of things here. He's moving forward quite heavily now. Obviously, takes down this base. Maybe he didn't need to go this far forward, but still going to have a high ground position. And if he wants, can he push further? There's only a few Banelings that are currently still morphing. That's kind of his go time, right? If there's no Banelings here, this army is generally not great. Hydras can do a lot of damage, but if they're taking damage, they die very quickly. The few Banes are going to finish up, but Kelazhur has a massive spread, reinforcing mines, still a tank in position. And of course, Solo is just desperately hoping for, I mean, maybe, I actually don't know at this point. Like, Lurkers can't really come into play well. He just has to try and just run in and clean this up with what he's got, which is not going to be fun. Great splits from Kelazhur, and this position is going to allow him to just trade out wonderfully. Even if he gets cleaned up, the damage dealt from Kelazhur is pretty darn huge. This is the last few units here. He still has reinforcements coming. I don't imagine they're going to be able to do too much else.
I could have sworn I had Vipers on the production tab. What happened to those? they didn't play? I guess they were just, I guess because he was already under so much pressure, he could not get enough energy fast enough to even try to support. And obviously Blinding Clouds wouldn't have been such a severe difference maker because it really was the spread out bio that was giving him trouble. And I gotta give kudos to Solar for at least trying to handle such a delicate problem. It was probably very tempting just to be like, okay, well, hopefully this all works and to send it forward immediately. But you did, it was actually kind of tricky, like using just the Hydras and getting all this transfused at the last second to take on the little bits that Kelazhur was throwing forward, because Kelazhur was also very mindful not to just lose everything, moving on a creep into those very small amount of Banelings. I mean, that was nice, but it just sucks that Solar was already in that position, right? It was already kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. So now, again, we're coming back to the question, can Lurkers save the day? Which they really couldn't have last time without those upgrades, without actually being in position. This time they're going to have their upgrades. Are they really in a great position, though? And, well, I guess maybe even more importantly, are they in a good number? 2 of them is not that impressive.
Yeah, the number of them right now is definitely an issue, as Kelazhur, he knows about them as well. Would not be surprised to see some Ghosts coming on production when he gets some free supply. I mean, Ghosts would be nice right now as well, just to help take down those Vipers, right? You know, snipe, even an EMP. Almost a Sola. Just under so much pressure, though. And Kelazhur just playing this carefully. He says, well, if I'm just going to sit on this creep and deny it, can do a lot from here. He's going to try and move up in this direction. That's a pretty quick move from him. He does have Widow Mine set up. The tank gets abducted in. The Marines on the low ground will have no issue with the wings that come in from that direction. And he could split away on the parasitic bomb, too. Kelazhur continue to trade very well and just slowly picking the fight, which he believes is going to win him the game. He's actually building Lib, which I don't mind with the low lurk count right now. Not a lot of Hydras. Lib could do a long way just shutting down the lurkers instead of going into Ghosts.
That was so close. That was so close to actually getting 20 Marines, but even then it might not have been enough. Kelazhur, he got that Ghost Academy, as you're pointing out, probably perfectly timed, but didn't even actually transition into those Ghosts. He just kept on putting his foot on the pedal to try and overcome someone who was on a very, very, I guess, well, not exactly low economy, but certainly was running out of cash very quickly. Because 81 drones ain't bad, it's just that Solar has been trading insufficiently for a very long time, never quite getting those cost-efficient engagements that might have happened had he been able to get to 10-plus Lurkers. So Kelazhur is controlling this game very well. If he really does find a stopping point, if suddenly he's not cracking any of these bases because Lurker numbers are a problem, he can always add on those Ghosts. But with a 70 supply difference, it looks like Kelazhur's going to win anyways.
Yeah, and there's no worry for bases for Kelazhur, right? His bases have not been under attack this entire time. His lurkers keep on dying. I mean, this is the last lurker, right? So that goes down. There's no splash damage left here. Solar has to type GG. And Kelazhur shows up in this game number 1. I would say very much so kind of playing to the expectations we set out at the start, right? Like somewhat aggressive, somewhat trying to be feisty. You know, he didn't let it go too late. He didn't get into like, you know, comfortable late game Zerg. And he really played to the map where, you know, you can push easily, you can take some dangerous positions, and the Zerg is limited in terms of where they can go.
Exactly. I think that's the best part about it, is that he played the map very brutally. Zerg players, all of them, probably would have found that very uncomfortable. So from the get-go, perhaps anticipating a different start, something even more aggressive, right? Something like a Reaper opener or even just a 2-base opener, and then actually going up against someone who is macroing very, very hard. And then as soon as you kind of try and say, okay, I guess this is my, you know, time to move on, is when they're able to knock on the door with one of their first big armies. And Kelazhur didn't even commit. It just forced Solar to commit to the army and further delay perhaps more resources banked for a better lurker transition. And then, you know, when Solar did that, Kelazhur backed away, and then when he came again just 30, 40 seconds later, Solar again was still underprepared. It seems very brutal to play a map like Waterfall unless you can get some of those tempo moments where you actually get the Lings into the third base or into the fourth base or something. But with Kelazhur playing that way, it just felt like Solar was very uncomfortable.
Oh no, absolutely. Just it felt like Solar never had a chance in this game as well, right? There's like his pressure from the start. It just kept up the entire way through. Yeah, gonna be very interesting to see what happens going into these next games. Solar in the bottom left-hand side is our purple Zerg player, and he must win 2 in a row to keep his TSL run alive.
Was that a tricky intro? That was a tricky intro.
Well, I said Solar at the start, right? And I was like, no, I said his name already. Whoops.
In the top right, as the yellow Terran, it is Kelazhur. No, I'm with you. I was just waiting for the observer to do the thing, and then I was like, oh, did he throw it to me? Did I do something wrong? No, it was a tricky.
I just said his name earlier. I had to improvise, It's not easy, this casting business.
It's really not. That's the real reason that we don't we want to try and get rid of the intros, is not because we think that they're unnecessary. It's because we keep messing them up, man.
They're so difficult. They make me look bad as a caster. But, you asked me to analyze, a game of StarCraft 2 and relate to all these games, hundreds of games the players have played. No problem, but introduce the players. Oh, God forbid we have to keep doing it.
Exactly, and they changed the colors for TSL, which is beautiful, but still, us casters, only so many brain cells. And then some of these maps aren't even actually bottom left, top right, right? They're 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock. It's like, what's up with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Data C, right? It's like a little bit like...
Exactly.
Like, one player's on the top, but just barely. So are they really top right? Are they more like middle top right? Yeah, and you're right, purple and yellow, like how often have I had to introduce purple and yellow players? Basically never. It's, there's a lot going on.
Exactly.
A lot going on.
But once again, we have Kelazhur going for a forward wall, but really just to get into a 1-max expand. So, Kelazhur is absolutely a player, I think, alongside the likes of Uthermal and Special, actually. I'd put them 3 as the ones who are capable of doing these mass Reaper openers still. But, no, he's not doing it. He's just actually getting himself a wall a little bit earlier on, which really, it kind of has no drawbacks as far as, if you are scouting correctly anyways. I do think perhaps a pool first could be very awkward, but a Reaper would take care of things eventually. And then if I'm thinking of, a fast speed opener, maybe on Tropical Sacrifice it'd be a little weird because it's a very large ramp to wall off, but even then I think you can get the wall off in time. Right? So it's one of those things where it's kind of alongside the command center first, where with how much it actually does fine against, you'd be a little surprised at how much it's not done.
Kelazhur is just being greedy, huh? It's down straight away again. Like, he just came into the series and said, if Solar Blade is aggressive against me, sure, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble, but if he doesn't, and I mentioned, they've been practicing at Home Story Cup and stuff, and it did generally feel like Solar got the better at Kelazhur in those games that I saw. Maybe Kelazhur's like, hey, if he feels comfortable against me in the long game, maybe I just get away with being super greedy every single time. And then what, And then is he really going to try and punish me and take away, try not to play his game where he feels good in the macro? Yeah, it's a fun little concept to work around.
I do think it would be taking the power away a little bit from Solar if he's the one thinking, oh, I'm the better one in the late game. And they're like, well, actually, I'm gonna meet you there. I'm gonna even beat you there in a lot of times, and kind of subvert expectations a little bit too. But I do think Waterfall was just one of the most brutal maps to play anything macro-wise from Solar. Unless, again, he was able to get some of those different beats of TVZ that can happen. If it's a Banshee opener, he deals with that totally fine. If it's a 2-1-1 and he just takes care of the first drop immediately. I think that would have given him some breathing room, but the way that Kelazhur played, it just really did not give him any breathing room at all with the map. But Tropical Sacrifice, kind of the opposite of Waterfall in the case that it's a bigger map, obviously, so in general, dimension-wise, but also rush distance. But also, you expand on your side of the map on Tropical Sacrifice. It takes a while before you expand towards your opponent. So in general, it just feels like it'd be nicer for Solar to actually get to a macro point that he can then barely survive, but still survive, and then get to whatever, lurkers perhaps once again in a much more dominant fashion.
The only thing I will kind of say for this map is there's some pretty nasty tank spots, right? Like, you can sit down below the low ground and then be, like, in range of the 4th base, or the area around that 4th base, and that can create some dangerous 3-base pushes, perhaps from the Terran player. So if Kelazhur goes, like, mega greedy and then fully commits to that 3-base attack, it can be very cool. And obviously, he was, very different map and was set up into the 4th last time, but he showed us his ability to be present on the map and, take good positions. If you can do that again here on Tropical, then it could be a way to kind of alleviate the pressure of, what usually becomes kind of a later game situation. Is the Viking Lib combo going to go on a bit of fun? Did he just kill his own SCP?
No, there's a Ling that ran in there.
It was just on the picture. I couldn't see it.
Yeah, because by the end it was just the SCVs, right? So it was really hard to see that a Ling. But I was looking. I saw that little cockroach scuttle on in there and then kill 2 SCVs. That's pretty amazing. Got full scout as well, but I think it was also evident as to what Kelazhur was doing via some other scouting means, but always great to get that little bit of harassment, literally very little bit. And kind of ditto for Kelazhur, as his Liberator does get some damage done, but ultimately, I believe it died. So, 4 drones is exactly worth a Liberator.
The Hellions are going to go back out to the center. Here's 4 drones. Have fallen in. They are going to try and push up this ramp a little bit, get some damage done onto the Queens, and just nibble away at that as we've got the Queens coming in from the other side. One of the Hellions does fall, so a little bit of damage, but Kelazhur doing a good job to try and slow down this creep, and I love this comeback in. These Queens want to put down some creep skimmers. You're going to get a Queen kill, but maybe that enables the Lings to get some kills here. I mean, that one Hellion in the back should go down, guaranteed. The Reaper will die. Okay, that's going to be all. Got a Queen, but obviously you're losing your map control as these Hellions fall.
And this was, I believe, better creep spread for Solar in this game. It feels like less creep tumors died. So, yeah, I've actually pulled it up and compare, but it does feel that way. And certainly Solar is not having, I think, as much trouble getting up to 4th base, which I guess he didn't really have trouble with, but it was denied at least once by the Hellions running by. And I don't think he'll have as much trouble getting to a 5th base either, which was denied twice, I believe, at top left base last map. And he just kind of conceded and got to the bottom right one. But the point is, more streamlined here for Solar. Kelazhur is once again going into that 4th CC. I loved your point about, potential 3 racks or 3 base dedication, because I do think there are some brutal spots, and Solar might still have trouble against a very gung-ho, kind of more mid-game Terran. But no, it's really quite similar. So even the, just simple double drop to kind of control and scout a little bit, and then more so just macro and not dying to any run-bys that Solar may or may not be planning.
I'll drop into the main base, trying to keep that Solar colony busy, running around all over the place. As Kelazhur just starts +2 attack, should be able to start +2 armor straight away too. Separate should remain felt. He even gets a score kill here, which I always think is nice, right? Just take away a bit of that stack defense, kind of safety net that you kind of play with there in the main base. We will lose this back though.
Yeah, I think Solar also realized he wasn't quite on creep though, so I think there might have been a potential for a trade there, or maybe even 2 Queens if Kelazhur was instant, but they were pretty close to creep. So, yeah, moving on. Solar is comfortably on 4 bases, getting to that 5th. As I said, there's no denials, which were quick denials. It was like, oh, the drone can't go over there, and then it came back 10 seconds later, but still, very much more streamlined version of the Zerg here. And then Kelazhur is doing something similar, which is kind of pushing, but let's see if he actually commits. I do think he's going to commit this time. Just because I think, to your point, the positioning for the tanks can still be so brutal that we're not going to have that kind of push and pull back. It is going to be a sticky push. It's going to stick here.
Sticky is going to stick around, but there is going to be a massive counterattack here from Solar, and it doesn't even matter. The units were kind of in the wall a little bit. I mean, Ling still kind of got through. Kelazhur has to send units home to deal with this. This is just too much supply, and he just cannot let this damage be done. Because against the Zerg army, you just cannot go kind of pushing in and kind of trading like that, right? Because they will hold with less units. That's how banelings work. Your pushes have to be slower. Now 13 SCVs go down. Of course, it costs Solar a lot of Zerglings, but it completely removes that, like you say, a sticky position that Kelazhur had set up otherwise.
Yeah, this is exactly what a Zerg player would want to do in such a position. It played out perfectly, and I think this is exactly what Kelazhur was hoping to negate last game by evidence of the pullback, but also, again, the map. It's so small that running back home maybe doesn't take as long. But this time around, it was this beautiful interruption of things. Kelazhur has been set back almost like he's in the Stone Age as far as momentum goes. Obviously still on 4 base, he's still getting a lot of production. Like, that's all fine and good, but Solar has more breathing room. Although I will say that the creep was not replaced around that 5th, so it is a little concerning that Kelazhur just gets back here and sieges up a tank again, but it is only 1 tank. So I still don't think this is nearly as scary as it could have been, as the 2 tanks, I guess, were caught up, AI'd, something like that, and now caught up by a run by. Beautiful move there by Solar.
Yeah, great catch, obviously. I mean, that's, again, just exactly what you're looking for, right? Remove the tanks, remove the splash damage in this position is nowhere near as scary as it was going to be initially, so yeah, gotta love the plays being made. Solar is absolutely on top of his game this time around, and again, Kelazhur, he absolutely wants to pressure this spot, but now that the base isn't there, well, now what? Now he's got to push through the top side. Now it's actually a bit closer for the Terran, but it's way more complicated to push into. That spot on the bottom side is way nicer, as we do see the Banes then roll through here. I mean, that's a dead bunker. The SCVs do respond in time, at least. And Solar recognizes, I'm not going to get much more done here. Let's try and save these Banes. Kelazhur will go hunting. Only denies a couple.
At least as one Marine chasing, I think looking for further run-bys, finds this very aggressive hatchery. Solar's like, yeah, maybe I can't get away with that one, so he goes for a quick cancel. But it's still, Solar is in such dominant position. He was allowed to get that run-by, he was allowed to get maxed out and actually push Kelazhur a little bit, force him to make some difficult decisions. And now that he's on his way to Lurkers, I think there's a lot more safety around it as well, while he's also continuing to get some great upgrades. So Kelazhur is more so on the back foot. We'll see how he deals with the larger macro game when the tempo and momentum is like this, which is just, right now not so great for him. But, he does still have at least a decent army, and he does still have this bottom side of the map that I think is very pushable without the creep spread, which Solar still has not gotten around to really getting into.
This is going to be another push on the bottom side. Just try and deny this base. The thing is, I feel like if you even denying this bottom side base, I was like, yeah, okay, that's kind of annoying, but not the end of the world for me just yet, as we do need kind of a getaway plan here. The Banelings crash in, and okay, Kelazhur just losing so much. It was a pretty good trade for him initially, but yeah, losing out on so much towards the end there, and it just doesn't feel like he can really get enough done. He's going to move into the Ghost Academy. He obviously has to start thinking about his own 5th base, right, which is kind of tough. If you go bottom right, that's very easy to access. If you go top side, it's very close to the Zerg. Maybe that's a problem for you. There's a lot of creep nearby. I just feel like Kelazhur's in a bit of a tricky spot. Definitely has to find his way out. He drops now, at least finding something, forces some units back for a little while, but not lifting up here for a little while. Again, it's just, you're losing too many units when you don't have a lot to play with in the first place. He does kill the top left base, at least.
He does get a base, but Solar is expanding to 2 other bases. The bottom base up and running, and then another bottom base being built. And Solar's maxed out immediately after sacrificing a few Banelings to clear things up, right? So of course, he's going to go for the aggression. Kelazhur has some supply running around, and he just lost some supply on that dedication onto the hatchery. So Solar is looking for a moment. He does choose kind of the right side, though, where that planetary is, and also some SimCity has been added, and getting Kelazhur to have a sensor tower, so he is trying to react, but then kind of a bamboozle goes through the middle, where perhaps Kelazhur was not expecting the fight. The Widow Mines aren't there, a blinding cloud on top of a choke as well, but overall, perhaps not the best engagement that Solar was hoping for. Caused a bit of chaos, but actually was kind of fine. Kelazhur responded fast enough.
Yeah, that was nice for Kelazhur. Keeps himself in a good position, and actually he's going to give himself some map control for a few moments here, as he's going to get to move through, get rid of a bunch of queens. Obviously, Scan here is going to deny a lot of creep spread as well, which is great. So yeah, really good moment from Kelazhur, and just carving back through the middle of this map, which is important because obviously Solar was basically completely free. Now has Kelazhur gone too far? He needs to get these mines borrowed and kind of get back to the mines, but yeah, just took a little bit of a step too far there, and Solar's still running forward, just Ling Bane. Believing he can continue to trade well. The Marauder's going to try and tank with a Widow Mine that does not get to fire. And there's still Ling Bane enough to fire through. There's another Widow Mine shot. I mean, this fight just doesn't end.
No, it doesn't. And I think Solar has a keen eye here. I think he is choosing his moments correctly. There just wasn't that critical mass of units for Kelazhur. Not even, maybe a couple more Widow Mines would have helped out in the beginning of that fight, but then towards the end, it was actually even the Widow Mines were hurting some of his own units because he was so spread out. So yeah, missing critical mass of bio to really stop the flow, but eventually does get that production up. Of course, there is still a lot of room to play with for Kelazhur. He could have given up his third base temporarily, not even entirely, and he would have been able to recover, but that is the moment that Solar chose to start packing in those lurkers. So the number of lurkers, I believe, starting to actually get kind of feisty, and then if Solar continues to be aggressive, which he absolutely is on Kelazhur's side of the map, now he's got lurkers to dig in. So that planetary is a goner, and there's really not a strong reaction from Kelazhur to deal with this.
There's not. He was actually killing the Lings on the run by, but then he moved commanded away, so they got an extra kill or so. Because losing a 5th base at this stage is something he kind of needs, right? He needs to be able to reach out to other bases. And he's building them all kind of to the bottom right side, which means they've got a long way to float over to the top. That's why he really does want to keep his expansion up. So that's kind of rough. He's got a couple libs here. I'm not sure if they're going to be good enough, as we do see at least one lurk again taken down straight away. Here are the libs, and yeah, they're going to do okay. There's a couple hydras that start going down. There's just too much of everything else from Solar, and he's going to tie this series up 1-1. We are going to be going to a game 3 to start the day.
GG. Yeah, that was great. That was, I don't want to say the map entirely, but with such almost eerily similar games, certainly that is the biggest difference, right? Was the maps trying to play out the same kind of Hellion movements was more difficult. Trying to play out the same threatening push was, yeah, not as difficult. You know, once he cleared that base, it was like, oh, okay, well then what? And then he pointed out that there really wasn't then what? And then the room to go for that massive run by just worked out so much better for Solar.
Yeah, no, Solar had some really cool moments there. I just think, just really had a good way to figure out like what the problems could have been, and he clearly thought, hey, right, like that tank position, that position there is going to be hard to remove. What can I do? Well, let's just take everything apart. Well, I'll take a lot at least, and just go across the map. And he has to respond. If he doesn't pull back then he's just going to lose too much. And then I can slowly clean this up or give up that position and make a move elsewhere, and he's got nothing else to build back off of. So it's very well planned out. He definitely seemed to have solutions for every situation. And just played a really solid game. It'll be fun to see what he can do on a game 3, because obviously in game 3, he's going to be kind of playing that kind of, more of a Terrany map again, I would imagine, right? If you're kind of asking me, we're probably looking towards like an Inside Out or so, maybe a Moon Dance. So he does have to maybe play one that's not quite as good for him. And obviously that was an issue for him in the first game. So, but if he can bring the same sort of solutions to the third game as he did in game 2, then it shouldn't really be a problem.
Inside Out. Solar Kelazhur. Yeah, this is also for those interested, I suppose. This is going to be back on West. So, obviously, if you don't know by now, Kelazhur, yes, he plays in the Latin American region, but he does live in the Netherlands. So that was actually favored for him on that last map, and he actually lost it. So, yeah, I think it is just more so the map. And Inside Outs, I still think, I really just don't think it's ever going to be as brutal as Waterfall, right? So whether or not as a whole things are favored for Terran, I believe that Solar is more capable of handling such an issue on any of the larger maps, of which Inside and Out is one, because every map is larger than Waterfall. So let's get into it. Top right, as the purple Zerg, it is Kaizi Gaming's Solar.
And in the bottom left-hand corner, our yellow Terran player from TeamLiquid, Kelazhur.
If Solar does win this, and we get an interview, it's gonna be my first question. Why Waterfall? What was the plan there?
Yeah, I'm genuinely kind of curious what his idea is. He vetoes Stargaze and Moon Dance. I just feel like Moon Dance is not as bad as Waterfall, right? Like at the end of the day. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
interesting.
I think so, because to be very clear, for anyone who is pushing up their glasses right now and cracking their knuckles, preparing to write somewhere that, well, actually, the rush distance. It's not so much the rush distance. It really isn't, which is actually a really cool thing. That Moon Dance can be the shortest rush distance, but then it doesn't feel that way. So unless you really are some type of StarCraft nerd, you're not going to feel that way. You're going to feel like Waterfall is the shortest, because it is far more constrained, dimension-wise. It is short. small, and base wise, it is limited. And I think those are the major factors for a Zerg player, because rush distance still has an impact, of course, and there's certainly reasons to bring it up, and sometimes better reasons than others. But I think for TVZ, unless you are talking about maybe a Reaper rush or
Roaches.
I don't know. Yeah, there you go.
Zerg
Thank you. Exactly. Yep, roaches. I was thinking Terran-sided, but Zerg-sided as well, of course. Then you're talking more about like third base to fourth base rush distances, which does anyone keep track of those? I don't think so.
I mean, if you don't ZG, then I can swear down nobody does.
It would be such a better stat to have, though, so much more often.
Yeah, but the problem is, it's like, which third base to which third base? Because then you have like 3 for each map, and then people are just like, we don't care, just tell us it's short. It's like, okay then, it's short.
Exactly. Yes, that is the ultimate caster dilemma. I can sound really smart when I say 31 seconds versus 33 seconds. But to like 5 people and everyone else is like, oh, numbers. God. Worst. Is this school? I don't think so. I'm just watching StarCraft on the weekend. Why am I learning math?
Oh, I showed up for some games and now I'm learning numbers. Like it's 31, 33. Like is one of them meant to be smaller? How am I meant to know? I'm
glad that we brought ourselves down on the intellectual level with our intros, and now we're bringing down the crowd as well. Our ability to understand math.
There's a surface CG, TSL, so...
Yeah, there you go, actually. You asked us to be this way. You asked us to be clowns.
You asked us to be clowns. Little clown. Comes surprisingly easily.
I know, right? It helps that it is rather early on in the morning. I know not so much for you, but in terms of StarCraft casting lifespan, I don't know.
Yeah,
probably
tough
is.
midday start. It is rough. Only a few hours to get up and get awake for the day. It's tough. It's a rough one. It's tough, yeah.
So 2 Reapers. Yes, this is a bit different, guys, but ultimately not different enough to really worry about. I mean, there's 1 Reaper barely surviving. I think it did lead to a couple more kills than 1 Reaper usually would have, right? But Kelazhur, I don't know, sometimes he does go 2 Reaper, and I'm always like, yeah, okay, I guess, sure. I guess he just likes it. Yep. But this is more interesting. Fusion Core coming in here.
Yeah, Fusion Core, and he's already started a stim. I imagine the stim has to cancel so you can afford the BC on time? No?
Yeah, with 300 gas?
Like,
actually, maybe not.
Core's done... Yeah, I mean, maybe you can just... I feel like if you wait, then you have to... Okay, start to liberate a fake. So he's going to cancel that. Yeah, maybe it does actually work out. Yeah, but he needs a tech lab still. Tech lab starts. Maybe it's actually okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Tom Grub and Wardy, once again, the finer points of Battlecruiser openers. Casting that Gumiho 4 gas game. You're like, does it? Yeah, does it not? Does it? Does it? Yeah. But this is, it seems to be back in vogue, right? Like, well, Gumiho game is a side, but here Marine also opened up the Battlecruiser right in a sim.
Yeah. That's just such a fast down. I'm genuinely impressed. It almost feels like too fast, though. How many Marines do we have on the map? 2. It's like, why do you need stim even? You know, you could have sped things up elsewhere. Maybe just fully for the fake, right? You know, he scouts the stim, so he doesn't think it's a BC. I think that might be the strongest part of getting stim so quickly.
Well, that I agree. Like, stim is not going to be helpful for quite some time. That is a fact. But I guess in this way, yeah, assuming that you can get combat shields, which you absolutely can, then combat shields will also be done by the time you do have a decent number of Marines. So there's that. I love that there's a gummy bear on top of stim. You can't even tell what it is. It's a stim pack of gummy bears. Literally just an adrenaline shot of sugar.
Adrenaline shot of sugar. Maybe that's what stim packs are.
Yes, it is that innocent, Wardy.
It's that innocent? They're just getting hyped? They've just made too many gummy bears. They've just made gummy bears into liquid. Cool.
This is the PG version of StarCraft, where these are not ex-convicts. We are not in space Australia. Anyways. So a decent amount of Hellions still being produced is the other thing that's going along with this, right? That's usually kind of the Wombo combo, is the Battlecruiser drags the Queens away, and then Hellions coming in on the front side, but then bringing any amount of Marines possible that have stim. What's up? It creates some complications, right? Even a Viking at like 1 hit from death is adding some damage here. Please die.
Yeah, I know. There we go. Viking goes down. The Marines back away. I don't believe they have a stim, so without HP. DC found 3 drones on this extractor and is now getting the extractor too. As the Hellions are going to get engaged back into. And the splash pattern up on those Zerglings over time though, so you know, working through a lot to trade out has been pretty decent for Kelazhur, I would say. And I mean, the BC is still alive, just being annoying, forcing the Queens to come back over here. Does get the kill on the extractor again. That's essentially 1 extra drone. It denies the gas for a bit longer. Yeah, honestly, it's been pretty cool. And because of the stim already being done now, combat shields, it transitions very smoothly into the bio play, right? So now you're already able to kind of follow up with further pressure. And I would imagine we're not that far off seeing Medivacs and Marines coming to reinforce across the map.
Shouldn't be that far off. I wonder if Solar is briefly misreading this as mech? He's getting a Roach Warren for...
Roach Warren as Spire. Yeah, I know.
Well, yeah. Yeah, the Spire too. He thinks there's more battle cruisers.
Yeah. No, I think he absolutely was. The moment he scouted here and saw more Marines, cancels the Roach Roar and starts to 2-2. It was just a fully instantaneous response. And now at least you can use the Spire still, because you can still kind of play Ling Bay Muta from here. And the Mutas aren't bad, because pushing back 1 BC, you don't really want to build Corruptors, but it's nice to have something to push it back properly with. And the Mutas can at least handle 1 BC typically. So, yeah, this turns out okay in that regard. Has an upgrade lead to utilize at points of this game as well. Obviously, we'll see what pressure Kelazhur can bring to the table. I do feel like these medevacs have taken a very long time to arrive, though. I feel like there could have been somewhat... It just feels like there should have been something scarier happening after the BC already.
I know what you mean, and unfortunately not in the game. I couldn't see the exact build order, whether he was using the reactors he had open to further emphasize the barracks, or if it really did just take that long to add a reactor to the starport. But either way, we do finally have the follow-up push with the Hellbats included and 1-1.
Yep, as you push forward, Hellbats, Marines all coming forward right here. Banelin's going to waddle in. There's no splitting on the initial Hellbats. That's definitely not good for Kelazhur. Run by hitting at the same time as his army gets wiped out. His mineral line is getting wiped out. This really feels as though, I mean, the Mutas are showing up, so it wasn't even a run by. Just Mutas showing up, 8-9 SCVs going down. The BC teleports into the defender, which is good enough. But, yeah, losing the entire army out on the map. That takes away any pressure you can apply, and now Solar is free to do as he wishes. He can still fly around the bases and get even more SCVs. Just keep himself in a wonderful position here in this final game of the series.
The other reason that Kelazhur probably didn't have that strong of a follow-up push was that his 4th CC was once again very fast, which would have been excellent if he actually had any amount of pressure after the Hellion BC. I think that was ultimately fine, even though it didn't really cause a lot of damage on Solar's side of the map. I think it was mostly covering all the production facilities and the command center building that was going on behind it, so fair enough. But as soon as he stepped off into the wilderness once again and got immediately bodied by a polar bear, that was Solar's army. It's like, okay, that's what happens. You don't tackle polar bears, I guess. And now Kelazhur's kind of dead.
Yeah.
Right? That's 70 supply difference already.
Dead is a pretty good descriptive word for this situation. Yeah, he's I mean, because he has to run around after Mutas basically non-stop still, and so Solar's just going to build up, get a massive wave of units, attack, and then we're just going to rinse and repeat, you know, until Kelazhur does actually fall over, because there shouldn't in theory be enough to really hold on against this. The Mutas are going to keep on adding little bits of damage. It's not like you ever properly recover. That was a very hopeful BC teleport, was about 2 screens short of where the Mutas actually ended up.
I wonder if that was an accidental T?
Yeah, for stim. Yeah.
Units were already stimmed, though, which is why I'm uncertain.
Yeah.
I thought so.
No, I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, maybe, but you're right. I think he was already stimmed, so it didn't really make sense he was trying to stim again already, but either way, I don't think that PC teleport being on cooldown is going to be the make or break, as Solar will just roll into this planetary. He actually doesn't really need to. He's going to save the Banes and start rolling in towards some mines, some Marines, gets the planetary as well. 50 Lings already rebuilding. That's a little bit of a pathing mistake that benefits Kelazhur, so Kelazhur gets a little bit of something extra out of this, but I mean, again, the Mutas just striking on the other side, and Kelazhur never has the numbers he needs to truly defend this.
Look at the supply, though, right? For TVZ mid-game being down 70 supply, that's usually pretty game over, but it really goes to show, I think, that if it wasn't for that severe misplay with the Hellbat Marine push, Kelazhur was literally 45 seconds away from having his big rush of unit production. That would have still put him on even footing with the late game Xur, because then he would have also been able to protect his 4th base, and it would have been 4 bases to whatever the situation is now for Solar, 6 bases, and 3-3 would have been afforded about as fast as possible. Basically, it would have been a late game TVZ, but that huge gap, because of that mistake, caused the death of the 4th base, which creates a kind of another gap, not as huge, but still very bad gap for a TVZ, and Solar does have a little playground to work with now. He can kind of do a couple even maybe boneheaded mistakes before he really gets punished for it, I think.
No, absolutely. You're right. If that attack on the top side didn't go bad, if it just retreats away, then yeah, losing the first few SCVs to the mutas doesn't matter. And you're right, he has such a powerful setup because he didn't attack soon because his 4th base had come online, and everything was setting up for a little bit of a later stage. Which again would have been okay. We just never got to see that part of the game because, well, the mistake happened, right? So, yeah, now Solar's over here, just going to try and slow down some SCVs again. He's attacking on the left side once again, so he is just everywhere as we are going to lingering our way through. This mineral line looks to be completely gutted, and I mean, it's just again going to be a continuation of ping-ponging left and right and just causing Kelazhur to run around. Kelazhur's now trying to split his army a little bit, but we also have access to ultras now for Solar, so he can actually get even better. Like kind of running in and just kind of throwing units at his opponent.
It's going to be a lot more difficult to split against multiple forms of army. Classic prepare for a big swell of Ling Bane, but actually get it with ultras, and then vice versa somewhere else. Once again, Solar is taking a very forward hatchery, very next to Kelazhur's, but Kelazhur can barely defend his 4 bases, much less move out on the map to take care of a 5th, or his 5th basically, Solar's 7th. And so far he is holding on, desperate to stay alive, desperate to continue into TSL. Would have been lovely just to take a little, I don't know, car ride over to the facility, if he even has to do that. But Solar is the one looking to move on.
Yep, it does look that way as the Banes just keep on crashing through Banes, Lings, GG's.